Today we've got a great revenge story all about cleaning a toilet. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, you want to be rude? I'll unsub you. This occurred during the pandemic. We had a new manager hired, not my manager, but a manager whose job sorted crossed over to my work. In one-on-one emails, she was always rude and short, being sort of vague and describing what she needs. If you dared send a response asking for clarification, she was beyond rude. No one really knew who she was except by name and the department she worked, but it was clear no one liked this person because of how rude she was, and she seemed to push her weight around to get what she wants. One of the other things that really annoyed me about her was her constant forwarding of emails from email lists that she subscribed to, many of which had nothing to do with our work, at least one a day at certain times. Well, one day, after constantly receiving these email forwards, I scrolled to the bottom to see if an unsubscribe option was available at the bottom of the email. Sure enough, there it was. I clicked on it and was happy to see her email address appear in the confirmation window to unsubscribe. So I confirmed and continued to do this for several weeks. During this time, the forwards became less and less frequent until it ended completely. I can't say for sure, but I'd like to think I unsubscribed her from all of her subscriptions, and this ended her email forwards. The one thing I feel like OP is unclear about is, did they actually ask them to stop forwarding their emails that are not important? I mean, I get it shouldn't have been there in the first place, and it's annoying, but did anybody ask? I mean, I guess it's not the worst thing for OP to just kindly stop making those emails appear. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. That said, our next story is I Was the Victim. Years ago, I split from living with my girlfriend and moved out, leaving my luxury car on our driveway. A few months later, I wanted to sell it, but when I tried to drive it away, the exhaust fell off. I assumed it was rust from standing unused for those months, but I paid for an expensive full stainless steel exhaust to be fitted, sold the car, and thought no more of it. A few years later, we'd both mellowed a bit and started talking again, and she confessed that a traveler had knocked on the door, said he'd seen the car standing for a long time, and could he buy the exhaust for his car. She said it was okay as long as he fitted his old exhaust back on my car, which he did. She took the money, and when I turned up, loved seeing the exhaust he'd roughly fitted fall off so quickly when I got around to collecting the car. To be honest, she was a great girl, and in those later years when we were friendly again and she confessed what she'd done, I saw the funny side of it. I think it says a lot about OP's maturity, but I just don't know if I would feel the same way. I mean, I feel like I would just be so slighted from that. Like explosive argument and all, it's just such a violation to mess with your vehicle like that, especially a cherished one. This next story is, post my explicit messages without my consent, I'll get your account banned. For some context, I, a closeted trans guy, met this guy on Reddit around 4 months ago. He had a well-established account. It was a fair few years old and he was kind of popular in a few communities. We were talking for the first few weeks, however, I decided that we wouldn't be compatible. We met in a kink subreddit and our needs seemed to be different. We agreed to stay as friends and we were gaming buddies for a solid 3 months. Everything seemed fine. We used to voice chat and game a couple of times a week. And then around 2 weeks ago, completely out of the blue, he blocks me everywhere. I'm obviously rather upset by this, but have no way to ask for clarity, so I just try my best to breathe and move on. Fast forward to the beginning of this week, I get a message on Instagram saying that this guy's Reddit account had posted explicit messages between him and I. From the first few weeks of talking, in a kink subreddit targeting/fetishizing trans people. The person who messaged me was checking that I'd consented to the post, since he was stupid enough to leave my Instagram username in the image. I didn't consent to this, and the post was reported by me, on this account, and several other people. I can only assume that this is what caused his account to be banned. A few days later, I get a call from my manager saying she received an email and would like a meeting. Turns out this guy had taken screenshots of my Instagram and Discord and outed me to my place of work. I am a trans guy who can't be out to anyone other than friends as my home support system isn't great, so my work knows me as my dead name. Thankfully, I only got a light scolding for being careless, sharing where I worked, and my manager was supportive of my transition. Now, fast forward to last night where I received this lovely message. It won't let me add any images, so I'll give a brief outline of the messages without getting too unclean. He said, "I can't believe you got my Reddit account deleted. All I did was post a dirty chat. We were compatible, we could have worked, but you're so freaking picky. I hope your job fired you for lying about who you are. How are you supposed to live a life if you can't even be honest about what you want to do with your gender? I hope whatever unfortunate soul you end up with knows what he's getting into with you. You're a waste of oxygen at this point. I wasted so much time hoping you'd change your mind about me, but you barely gave me a chance. Hope your new victim hurts you. You deserve to be crushed. Thanks for making me lose my 7-year-old account I was using to build up." Again, for context, almost 2 months ago, I started talking with another guy who is now my boyfriend, and things are going so great. Since I considered him a friend, I was happy to share that I was talking with someone new, and he seemed, at the time, rather supportive and encouraging. But by the tone of these messages, it's kinda clear that he wasn't okay with being just friends, and he's maybe jealous of my new relationship. I should add that 2 days ago, he contacted my best friend on Instagram, who refuses to show me the messages, so I can only assume that yet again, it's his attempt at trying to expose me somehow. Anyway, my response to this was along the lines of, "This will be my final message to you. This is all on you for not communicating your feelings to me like an adult. You said you were okay with us being friends. We gamed for around 4 months, and you had plenty of time to tell me you had feelings or whatever you call this, and I wouldn't have spoken about who I was talking to. Stop trying to contact my work and stop trying to contact my best friend. You lost access to your account because you posted explicit conversations between us without my consent or permission. You're 26. Grow the freak up and move on." I gather he didn't take too lightly to this, as his final response before deleting the account was, "I hope you lose everyone who loves you. You don't deserve to be loved. I hope you pop one too many of your pills. I hope you don't get whatever trans slur care you want. I hope your boy toy cheats on you. I hope your pregnant best friend dies and you end things because you're so pathetic and lonely you can't live without her." So here's me ranting and exposing what a fragile man this guy is for blocking and harassing me instead of communicating his feelings like a mature adult. And by the way, my boyfriend and I are laughing at this, especially the boy toy bit. I'm not as upset as I would have been if this had happened a few months ago. I'm learning to grow a backbone and stick up for myself when it's needed, and I certainly know that blocking me so I couldn't tell you to stop messaging my friends and posting explicit stuff and harassing my place of work shows more about him than it does for me. Honestly, I'm just at this point concerned about how much information OP did share with this guy. Like, if he's knowledgeable enough to go and contact this guy's place of work? I mean, somebody that sounds that unhinged out of nowhere when you didn't expect it, I'm afraid this is one thing that would send somebody that crazy overboard and trying to do something actually serious. Our next story is sharing a story. So this happened to my friend Elena. Her and her husband were divorced 10 years ago. Ex, Bruce, married Nadine 5 months after the divorce was finalized. Nadine is extremely insecure and lives her life out loud. She is constantly taking photos and posting everything on her public social media. She thinks that she's an influencer. This woman is in her 50s but runs around like a teenager with their first smartphone. In the beginning of their relationship, Bruce's mom, Polly, was over the top about Nadine. She would compliment her about everything, and at the same time trash talk Elena, all in front of their daughter Chris, 20 years old. Chris and Elena are very close, so Chris was offended and took it personally. Recently, they went on a 10-day vacation. Polly rented an Airbnb for everyone. This included Bruce, Nadine, and Chris. Also included were his brother and his wife and their small children. There were about 8 people in this place. Nadine doesn't lift a finger, but complains when things aren't done as she wants them. Nadine took a ton of photos of their trip. She never asked anyone if she could photograph them, much less ask permission to post any of the photos. She also made inappropriate comments about a photo of her now sister-in-law that she posted on social media. Comments such as, "If I was that big, you wouldn't see me at the pool," and "It's no wonder her husband is golfing." She made comments about the kids being kids and how they were ruining her vacation, and how vacations should be adults only. She also felt that Chris shouldn't be there as she's a kid too. She insulted Polly's cooking, yet never once offered to provide a meal while they were there. She had photos of everyone and insulting comments too. Nadine posted everything on her public social media page. Chris found it, she spoke to Bruce about it, said it really wasn't nice of Nadine to post all of that. Bruce defended Nadine. But the pictures are really good and, she's an influencer. So Chris downloaded/screenshotted all of Nadine's posts and forwarded them to the entire family saying, "Hi everyone, I thought you'd enjoy seeing the photos that Nadine took of all of us while we were enjoying our vacation." And that is sweet revenge. After all that, I just want to know what the reaction is when her posts finally reached an influencing audience a little bit further beyond her expected scope, or at least the desired scope. Our next story is Barracks Justice. About 20 years ago, I was in my initial job training for the Army. We were all fresh out of basic training, so even the slightest degree of freedom could go straight to your head. Our group felt particularly under-supervised, probably because of our situation. The MOS, Military Occupation Specialty, our job title, we were all training for had been officially canceled 6 months prior, but our enlistment contract said we had to go through the school, so they kept it open just for us, knowing we would have to be retrained later. Barracks life for a bunch of 17 to 20-year-old soldiers can be a rough time. None of us were actively malicious, but the prank sometimes went a little far. I got a blanket party on my first night just because the drill sergeant assigned me the ripped mattress everyone else used to store the communal adult entertainment stash. For those who don't know, a blanket party is a group beatdown on someone who is sleeping. 2 guys hold down the blanket so they can't escape. The others throw punches. Ours were more advanced roughhousing than a real fight. No one ever really got hurt, just stupid kids doing stupid things. Then came Private Idiot. He was in the class behind us. I don't know how, but this guy managed to show up to in-processing completely drunk. I know that the Army can be a little self-selecting for freak-ups, but Idiot was one of the worst I've had the displeasure of serving with. He just didn't understand the difference between roughhousing and actual harm. There were a few bad incidents which led to him being ostracized, which led to more bad incidents. One of the primary tools of barracks violence was the sock. I know it sounds incredibly juvenile now, but we were young and dumb. It was always better to settle things between ourselves than to get drill sergeants involved. I'm pretty sure they knew, but so long as we didn't officially bring it to their attention, they were happy to leave it be. If you wanted to beat on someone, you balled up a sock and stuffed it into the end of another sock, and could swing it at someone without any risk of causing harm. If you were really serious and wanted them to feel it, you would have used a bar of soap in a sock. It hurt, but less than a fist and far likely to leave an incriminating bruise. But Private Idiot didn't get the message. He put a padlock in a sock, and he went for the nut shot. Miraculously, his victim was okay. The drill sergeants went as far as they could without a court-martial. In hindsight, they probably should have. Private Idiot was demoted twice, down to E1, the lowest pay grade in the military. Beyond that, he was docked to half pay, and had racked up so much punishment duty that he was going to be on post for a full month after his 6-week training course ended just to complete it. I actually heard him begging the instructors to throw him in the brig rather than have to continue the cycle of freaking up to add more time for him to freak up again. He was denied. But whatever the Army did to him was justice, not revenge. So it wasn't enough for us. As I mentioned earlier, he was in the class after mine. So when we came back from our graduation ceremony, his class was still in training, and we had spent all of the last several weeks learning the best ways to mess someone up in the barracks. The first was probably the most petty, but satisfying. We took a group collection. Everyone in our class shaved or trimmed to provide a handful of downstairs hair to stuff his pillowcase. Laundry service was every 2 weeks if I recall, and had just been through the day before. We also gathered every piece of contraband we had accumulated, adult entertainment, chewing tobacco, and the like, and stuffed it haphazardly in his locker. Then we zip-tied it shut so he would need someone, almost certainly a drill sergeant, as no one else was going to help him, to open it for him. I recall some of my classmates laughing about something else they had done too. I think they dumped the contents of their spittoon bottles into his dress shoes, and that was it. We left and never got to see the fallout. By the time he would have gotten back, I was already at the airport, ready to put that place as far behind me as I could. Well, that really sounds like a very educational place that put OP in line to serve the military well. Baby8227 commented, Our private idiot got back-turned and ended up in our platoon. Dirty underwear in her wardrobe got her whole room on show parade. She stole off others when we got paid, and she stole off me when my little old great aunt sent me 20 British pounds to get myself some shoe polish. Because I got the money in the mail, the serial numbers weren't put into the book, so I couldn't prove she stole it. So, barrack room law. The others kept watch, and I took her best shoes and scored them up and down the outside wall of the barrack room. Yep. Steal my money and I'll destroy your shoes. No one grasped on me and she knew it was me, but like me with my money, she couldn't prove it. This next story is, if you really want that parking spot, you should just ask. I don't have a driveway. I keep the car in a public car park next to my flat. It's a 2-minute walk, it has CCTV that is actually being used, needed a footage for insurance purposes, council was more than happy to look through 3 days of stuff, and the permit isn't that expensive. A few weeks after we moved here, I've found my spot. Well, it technically wasn't mine, we don't have delegated spaces, but I used that spot for over a year, and no one had any problems with that. It wasn't under any trees, it was next to a fence on one side, perpendicular to any other spots, so no one parked next to me on the other side, and it was easy to turn around. This is the only long-stay car park in the town center, so it's always fully packed between around 9 a.m. till 5 to 6 p.m. Everyone who works or shops in town uses this one. The spot I called mine was perfect in a sense that it was relatively far from any other spots, except the other two behind it, and I used to do night shift, so I left the car there from 6:30 a.m. till 9 p.m., and this kept my car scratch and dent free for over a year. Except one time, as one idiot reversed into my car, as workers and shoppers came and go, so all in all, it was perfect for me. A year or so later after I found my spot, someone new moved into some of the flats and wanted my spot. First, they started leaving their car there, even though they must have seen mine there pretty much every day. I didn't mind if it wasn't available, I parked in another spot. But if it was empty as I've got home in the morning, I used it as much as I could. When leaving their car there every now and then didn't work, they pulled their wheelie bins next to my car. It was strange, but I just put the bins back next to a wall. Next day, the bins were there again. I put them back again. Third day, bins there again. So I wrote them a polite letter and dropped into their letterbox. The flat number was on top of the bins, and asked them not to put their bins next to my car, because if it's going to be windy and the bins scratch my car, they might be liable for the damages. Fourth day, the bins were there again. Wrote another letter, pointed out that their flat number is on top of the bins, so it's not a rocket science to figure out who they belong to, and asked them again to not put their bins next to my car. I also pointed out that the CCTV in the middle of the car park is actually functional, and I can ask the council to find out who and when puts the bins next to my car, and they might be liable for criminal damages, and since they blocked my car into a spot in a public car park, they also might be liable for causing an obstruction to the public highway, which again is a criminal offense. Fifth day, the bins were there again. At this point, I was sure that they either don't speak the language and don't understand my letters, or they just generally don't give a crap about them. So I was moving their bins back next to the wall every day, until bin collection day. It was 4 black wheelie bins for 2 flats. As I've got home in the morning, I lined them up next to the fence, and then very slowly parked next to them, so close that my finger wouldn't fit between my car and their freaking bins. And since I've got to the car park at 6:30 a.m., and the bin lorry usually came at around 7 a.m., I popped into a Greg's, bought a coffee, sat back into my car, and waited for the collectors. When they arrived, they looked very confused and asked me why I blocked the bins in, so I quickly explained the whole story. They told me that the rule is, if they can't reach a bin, they won't come back to empty it, and since my car is unfortunately blocking all 4 of those bins, they can do freak all. They gave me 4 tags that says they were unable to reach the bins to put on them once I'm done having fun, and they'll come back in 2 weeks to empty it. So that's what I've done. Once the bin lorry left, I put the tags on the bins and went home to sleep. Their bins, with all the crap in it, were there for the rest of the day until I left at 9 p.m. But miraculously, weren't there the next morning I've got home. For the next 2 weeks, they tried to fill them as much as it was possible, but they've had to resort to bin bags, which the bin lorry did not collect next time they came around. Just left a note on the bins that they can only collect what's in the bins, but as an extra, they put all the bin bags in the wheelies for crabs and giggles. It took them a whole month to work down their rubbish because the bins were always full of crap, but I've never had to move them again. These people should have known that this was always going to be a very risky game to play. If anybody has missed their collection services, especially something as infrequent as every 2 weeks, you know that you can't afford to mess around with those bins and have any chance of them not being collected. Our next story is, I paid about $2 to upset an annoying Frenchman. It would take many paragraphs to vent about all the little annoying things this guy did over the course of 3 days. Here's the TLDR. Along the west coast of Ireland, on a group camping/biking trip of about a dozen people, insecure French guy kept blathering on about how France best, France this, France that. Well, in France, blah 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 blah. So during a stop in a small town, I bought a baguette and stashed it in my bags. At that night's dinner, I whipped it out and started eating it corn on the cob style. Frenchie said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Huh?" The other people at the picnic table looked either confused or amused. So I took a few more horizontal nibbles and then passed the duchy to my left, to Linda, who had expressed annoyance about Frenchie earlier. Without skipping a beat, she nibbled off a row of crust and then passed it to her left. This continued for another 3 people. And just before Frenchie's turn, he stood up and walked away, muttering something in French. As he walked away in the thickest of Boston accents, my friend Mike said, "Freak that guy." I'm not sure if my Boston accent was all that accurate or not, but I tried. Just a little bit more for the immersion level. That said, I feel like this sounds like a very American thing to do. I need to specifically annoy a Frenchman. I know what to do. Go for the baguette. Our next story is, oh, you need the bathroom? Sorry, customers only. I work as a server in a diner downtown in a large city. It's small and cheap, but I like it there. Last Saturday, I'm serving a mom and her son, like about 15 or 16. Looks like a typical spoiled rich kid look and behavior. He orders a large soda for himself and dismissively waves me away with his hand without a thank you. Mom totally ignores this. Rude, but never mind. I didn't say or do anything. Throughout the meal, every time he wants something, he clicks his fingers at me and says, "You," and for me to hurry it up. When I serve his food, he says, "Why'd you take so long? Be faster." Literally no manners. He gets a lot of refills of his soda and complains about literally everything to me. Mom ignores his rude behavior and is just on her phone. I was glad to see them both leave. Later they come back and he's clearly looking uncomfortable. Now, we're only a small diner and have a tiny customer bathroom out back. Sadly, because of homeless people trying to sleep in the stalls, it requires a key. From the way he's acting, he obviously needs to go, squirming around and looking awkward. All them refills clearly caught up with him. He asks me where the bathroom is, because there's not obviously one in the main part of the diner. I put on best customer service face and say, "Sorry, the bathroom is for customers only," even though he was only in there a few minutes ago. Technically, he's no longer a customer. He groaned and shifted around a bit, "But I really gotta go." I smiled and said, "Sorry, I'll check with my manager." I went out back for a few minutes to do nothing. I come back out. He's standing by the counter pressing his legs together. Mom is clearly getting impatient with him. "We'll just get you the bathroom key in a moment," I say, smiling, then just go about my job, ignoring him as he looks more frantic. Eventually the mom says, "I'm not waiting around all day for you to use the toilet," and hurries him back out the door as he whines about really needing to go. Luckily, there aren't many places with public bathrooms in this part of town. Petty revenge served. Honestly, if somebody is that bad that they've got to go, that they're doing their little dance or whatnot, they're squeezing their legs together, they're pretty much on the brink. So the mom's comments to me are not, "I'm not waiting around all day for you to use the toilet." They translate to me as, "I'm not waiting around all day, just pee in my car, son." And honestly, if they're as rich enough as they appear, maybe she actually doesn't care about that too much. S.N. Orpheus wrote, "Sounds like his mom was an utterly awful parent. and that's where he learned it. He needed to be taught a lesson by someone since his mom was completely disengaged with him. He may have been the jerk, but I also feel sorry for him a bit. Zesty Closemap 4651 responded, "Working with kids in a group home setting, I've learned that's basically most kids. Even the ones who seem normal. Once you dive into the backgrounds of children, it starts to make sense. The whole nature versus nurture argument was made for me. It's totally nurture, and there's a major lack of it in parents on this planet, sadly." Edit to clarify, not that he deserved it. This is petty revenge, I know I'm just making a point. But that it's hard to feel completely against the kid. He probably doesn't know better. Hopefully he learns. This next story is, my travel partner doesn't want to clean the toilet? Okay. I've 55-year-old female, been on a 5-week RV trip with a friend, 49-year-old female, who has systemic disabilities which cause her to not have a lot of energy. She's also very sensitive to various things, which are things most adults deal with in everyday life. She was lucky enough to have inherited a bunch of money from a relative and thus has helper people that she hires on a weekly basis to come and do stuff around her house. And for the first week and a half of this trip, she barked orders at me and was extremely demanding and not at all helpful in any aspect of the travel. The RV has a bathroom on board, which is kind of like driving around with a porta potty, but slightly less gross because there's a flap that covers the hole when you're not purposely flushing waste. Friend really did not want to use the onboard bathroom, but we were at an RV park and the public bathrooms were too far away for her to walk to, so she used them while I was doing some work outside. She came out and announced that she had both peed and pooped. I congratulated her and asked if she had any problems figuring out how to flush the toilet. She said no. I let her know that there was a toilet brush hanging on the back wall in case there were any remnants left over. She told me that she does not clean toilets. I told her that I was not at all interested in cleaning up her crap. She replied that she hires people to clean her toilets and that she refused to do it. I asked her to please at least swish some water around to see if that took care of any evidence. Apparently it did. Fast forward to about a week later, when I basically had had enough of her demands and told her that she should fly home. This was a standing option the entire time because she was not sure if she would be comfortable on this trip. She slept the entire time while I did 90% of the driving. Here's where my revenge came in. On our way towards the airport, we stopped at a tiny bookstore with one bathroom. We both had to use the restroom. I had to go number 2. I made sure I got to the restroom first. Let's just say that after flushing, there was still some of my own evidence behind and didn't bother to flush any extra paper afterwards. It was a small revenge, but it was satisfying. If somebody is in your RV and literally goes and is staunchly refusing trying to clean up any remaining evidence, I do not regard that kind of person as a friend. Somebody who looks at their friend and says, "No, I will not clean up the mess my defecating has made in your toilet because I hire people to do such a thing." Okay, well then hire somebody to come clean my toilet right now. Our next story is, insist that your kids have loads of sugary food and drink? How about you deal with them? Many moons ago, I used to help run a sports scheme for my local municipal area in my country during the school holidays. Kids aged 5 to 12 could come along. Their parents would pay a heavily subsidized small nominal fee and get a cool 4-hour sports session of soccer, basketball, tennis, etc. It ran very successfully and was really popular. Around halftime, there would be a break to get a drink and a snack. There was a little 7-Eleven style store just around the corner from the field and grass where we ran the scheme, so kids could get refreshments if they had money. We tended to walk everyone down there as there was a nice seating area outside the shop. Trouble was, the kids started buying the most sugary snacks, candy, and drinks they could and ended up hyper for the next hour, then have a sugar crash and be irritable little horrors for the final half hour. Magically, they'd all be fine about pickup time. To get around this, I banned the kids from buying anything sugary and only savory snacks or fruit with water could be purchased. This lasted 2 days before the entitled parents of these little darlings complained to my boss that I wasn't letting their kids buy whatever the heck they wanted. I was told by my boss to just let them buy whatever they wanted again because apparently, you're not their dentist, it doesn't matter what they buy. Fine, if you want to play rough, let's do this. From then on, we didn't go to the shop at halftime. We went 45 minutes before the end. They had just enough time to get super annoying and hyper before it was home time, then their parents had to deal with their sugar-derived carnage at home. I kept it that way till the end of the summer and felt so much delight at these entitled jerks having to deal with their own kids being awful day after day. The next summer, nobody complained when I went back to regulating their purchases at snack time. Win-win. You know, I've heard several times that the idea of a sugar rush or a sugar high are actually a myth. Like kids who eat a bunch of candy all of a sudden getting all hyper. Apparently, the science says that's not a real thing, but you see or hear about these kids drinking sugary stuff and just be bouncing off the walls. And you're like, for once, I'm not sure if science is right about this one. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely awesome revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.